So I'm Tom Price, Senior Vice President of Global Growth Strategy and Solutions at Jacobs.
Aaron Hochwimmer, I'm a Director of Operations for our power business across ANZ, also a Company Director here at Jacobs NZ. Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of our values for the company is we live inclusion, and that's really a cornerstone of our strategy and how we work as a business. And so it was really obvious for us that signing the Accord really was really synergistic to that, and it was a no-brainer for us. Really how we act and how we perform as a business. It's a demonstration of how we operate. We've been on this journey for a number of years now in Australia and New Zealand, and it was great to show that public commitment. And I really like actually how we're obliged to report on our progress as a company, as a sector. Keeps us honest, which I think is really important for us. For our staff, actually, we've got really good feedback since we signed the Accord. Comments that they're really enthused about being part of the company. It's a really inclusive place to work, and as an employer, that's really, really positive to hear that. And the feedback's been great. So yeah, it was really easy for us to sign it. It's a bit of both. Certainly we're seeing across our global business a focus on inclusion and diversity. In Australia in particular, we have a number of really senior people getting behind this in the Australian context. And I felt as a local business leader it was the right thing to do for us to really get behind what we live as a company. Great question. I don't have all the answers for that, but certainly we're delighted that we're seeing this infrastructure spend in New Zealand, and we're, as a company, pleased to get behind the vision for New Zealand. I think it's going to be a blend of local hires and also hires in our global offices. So we operate in tandem with some design offices overseas. We have design offices in India, Poland, Malaysia, and the Philippines. So the cultural inclusion diversity is really important for that. For me personally, I've just returned back from the Philippines for the last 5 years, and that gave me a perspective of being a minority in a different culture, and I thought that's valuable for me personally and professionally, but to understand how we bring people into New Zealand and as part of a delivery team for some of these projects, right? So we do certain things like hosting some of those cultures here in the office, working on specific events for inclusion. So in November we have an Inclusion Week event that really focuses a little bit on cultural inclusion and cultural ways of working together.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I'm really proud of at Jacobs is I'm a male champion for change in our women's network, right? And what I've learned on my journey, and look, I'm not an expert, I'm still learning, is there's a few things that I think we need to do. We need to help folks understand that gender issues are not just about women, it's about all of us, right? So if you look at maybe some of the business benefits of a more inclusive and diverse workplace, we think that helps to get more folks involved, because for some, I think a lot of folks will understand that it's the right thing to do, right? To give all your teammates opportunities to succeed and be themselves, bring their best to the workplace. But when we also talk about some of the actual business benefits of that, right? So if you look at the most successful companies and organizations, what you find is they're the most creative, they're the most innovative, and that creativity and innovation really comes from diverse ideas and inputs, right? But it's not enough just to have diverse people. You have to activate that diversity so everybody can bring it to the table, and we do that through a big focus on inclusion, right? So if we get the diversity, we activate the diversity through inclusion, we can be creative, we can be innovative, we can produce better solutions for our clients, and that's where we become a company that's like no other and a really special place to be. Sure, I think I'd start with this. We shouldn't look at it as what can New Zealand learn from the rest of the world. It's really about what can we all learn from each other, right? I don't really think there's any specific place on the globe that's more of an expert than others. There might be more focus in one place than others, but it's really about coming together, having the regular dialogue, and really sharing our learnings as we go on this journey together. I think New Zealand should come at it as an approach. There's as much that the rest of the world can learn from New Zealand as the rest of the world can bring, right? So just really creating the culture of the dialogue, the discussion, the sharing of the best practices so we can all get better together.
Yeah, we have this thing called a model called the Leadership Shadow from the MAORI Champions of Change, and we use that to really act as a guide of how we behave and how we perceive and measure, prioritise as leaders. And that goes for all senior leaders of the company. So our global CEO and our local business leader and across Australia and New Zealand are recognised MAORI Champions of Change. And I think that's important to drive change in this area from top down. And we try and be active in industry and external forums and leading by example. And we get good comments from our staff that they see those behaviours. We're looking to have some ambitious targets with females in leadership positions across Australia and New Zealand this year. We've committed to that, and we've got plans, and we're meeting those plans this year, which is really good to see. And a little bit more focus on providing those opportunities, providing sponsorship, providing opportunities for those different minority groups. So I still think women in engineering is a minority group. We're looking to address that, and looking to tangible things like pay parity is one example. We're really looking to address that and narrow the gap, close the gap.
And maybe I can add a little bit to that. Yeah. So Aaron mentioned our CEO, Steve Demetrio, and at Jacobs, we're really lucky to have Steve leading this company. He walks the talk, right? I think you probably find it hard to find a CEO these days who doesn't talk about diversity, but are they demonstrating measurable actions around that, right? So when Steve took over as CEO of Jacobs, we had a executive leadership team that was all male. Right, in a very short time, Steve's led change there, and now we're 60% female. He's driven a lot of change in the diversity of our board of directors, right? So we've got our CEO setting the right example with visible actions. Some other things we're doing is we have global training for leaders at all levels around conscious inclusion, right? Understanding our unconscious biases, how we can get past those and make everyone feel included. We've got training session for leaders around inspirational leadership, inclusion and diversity, et cetera. So we're really trying to make this just who we are and what we do and weave it into the fabric of our culture. Yeah, so again, if you look at the most successful companies and the most successful organizations, they're the companies that are the most creative and innovative and produce the best solutions, right? And how do you get those creative, innovative solutions is through diverse ideas and input, right? So by having a diverse workforce, all the different ways we can measure diversity, right? We believe we get those ideas as long as all of the folks on that diverse team feel included and feel safe bringing their ideas, bringing their whole self to work, right? So as long as we get the diversity, we activate that diversity through inclusion, we'll get the best ideas, create the best solutions, and be a successful company. Yeah,
just to add to that, when I'm getting more involved in inclusion diversity now, I think back in my career of projects I've been involved in and teams I've been involved in, and it's really interesting to think when we've had a more diverse group of people, the successes on those individual projects. So I found that useful reflection and taking that forward into who I recruit into teams and try and bring a more colourful blend of people in. Yeah, great question. I think we're doing some initiatives right now, and I'll go through those, but we're actually learning from other parts of our business. So in Australia, there's a lot of work happening with the Aboriginal and Torres Straits communities and how we engage and bring those groups into our workforce. And I'd say New Zealand's probably further along culturally, I think, in some ways. We've And some of the specifics we've done recently, we've engaged at the grassroots level with some of the STEMs and schools. We had a partnership with Mangere Kura and De La Salle, so a couple of schools with pretty high demographic of Māori and Pacific Island students. And one of our projects for the Auckland Zoo, the Southeast Asia Precinct project, we paired up with those schools, work with them about some of the design concepts and get them involved in the different balances between the animal enclosure and the visitors. And actually they came along to the project, looked at the construction and could connect the theory with the practice. So I think that's been a useful outreach activity to really encourage that demographic to engineering and to Jacobs eventually. We also have a program called First Look. So we engage with the local universities. We have a program with Auckland, University of Auckland, and part of the criteria for selecting those students is an inclusion and diversity lens as well, thinking about how we increase our Māori representation. And other small things as well, like we have a focus on language training, cultural training for all of the staff here to embrace our national identity. Small things like the meeting rooms, Māori place names, I think that just brings that topic to the front of conversation. As we mentioned, we're really trying to focus more inclusion for some of the minority groups. The rainbow community, LGBT community is one of those. So that's called the PRISM Network in Jacobs. And just reflecting personally, I mentioned I was up in Asia for the last 5 years. A really interesting place to work, but unfortunately a lot of prejudice in terms of that community in particular, both culturally and some of the religious aspects of some of the countries as well. And I found it was quite a hard place to try and stimulate that community, but over the last 5 years we had a great level of success. It ended up in Manila being quite a vibrant group, and I think some lessons from that experience I can bring back to New Zealand. I think New Zealand, we're fortunate, it's probably a more open community generally than some other parts of the world, so I think it should be easier to foster that. But coming back to the comment about leadership engagement, our VP in ANZ, Rich Hayes, is involved as a champion in terms of the Pride and Diversity group in Australia. And so that sort of leadership, that sort of outward focus for that minority group in particular, I think is a really good example. And we want to do more of those initiatives here locally as well.
I guess I'd just add, it's really about the ongoing dialogue of all of us, right? We're all different and we're all the same, right? We're different because we're individuals. We're the same because we all work at Jacobs, right? So how do we celebrate all of that together, no matter what label might be attached to an individual, right? We try to establish that culture where we celebrate the individuality of every one of our employees and make them feel comfortable bringing that to work. And we try to do that with many visible examples at all levels, starting from the top. So really just to add a little bit to Aaron, it's just the broad cultural inclusion culture we're trying to establish at all levels for all of our employees.